At this point, it's reasonable to assume that everyone knows what a mafia is and what actions these types of criminal groups engage in. These mafias typically operate on a hierarchical command structure, with a don making all critical decisions. They, unlike regular businesses, do not pick what budget to employ in the next fiscal semester, but rather which path to take throughout their criminal activities. Without further ado, here are our picks for the top 10 most powerful mafia countries in the world. Number 10. The Triad, Chinese Mafia. The Chinese Mafia, also known as the Triads, has a complex history steeped in political strife dating back centuries, when emperors and dynasties governed China and monks used kung fu to rebel against their captors. China has seen a lot of violence throughout its long and diverse history. Centuries ago, Chinese emperors ruled their kingdom with an iron fist, and many of them were deposed in brutal revolts. The emperors could never control the people, no matter how hard they tried. Throughout Chinese history, people have organized secret organizations to protect themselves against thieves, outlaws, and their country's leaders. The majority of these secret societies were honest, but some were not and turned into criminal organizations. Triad members adhere to a strict code of behavior and take pride in their group. Every new Triad member must go through the initiation procedure, which includes swearing an oath of secrecy. Triad organizations are linked to other countries and remain one of the most dangerous criminal organizations. Nonetheless, they remain secretive, difficult to enter, and even more difficult to leave. Number 9. Russian Mob, Russia. The Russian Mafia has existed since the time of the Tsars, but it did not achieve international notoriety until after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, when many mobs vied for control of Russia and brought their battles to the streets of America. During Joseph Stalin's cruel tyranny as Soviet leader from 1926 to 1953, millions of people were detained in a network of Siberian labor camps known as the Gulag. In the hard environment of prison life, groups of tough prisoners began to emerge. They called themselves Vori versus Zakoni, in English, thieves in law, after an old Russian thieves' code from ages ago. They covered themselves with tattoos to communicate their stories and toughness. This allowed one Zakoni to rapidly identify another Zakoni without saying anything that the guards could overhear. As the decades passed, new members inherited the Zakoni's famous ferocity and violence. When Mikhail Gorbachev, the former president of the Soviet Union, granted political prisoners amnesty in the 1980s, the gulags were closed and the Zakonis were released into the world. With the demise of the Soviet Union, many people found themselves in a position to consolidate power and money before expanding their activities to prosperous America. One of the reasons law enforcement has had such a difficult time bringing the Russian Mafia down is that, unlike the highly organized Italian Mafia, there is no central Russian Mafia or leadership. The Zakoni is a loose network of related gangs, each with a couple of senior honchos. They frequently collaborate for a common purpose, but in the 1990s they were just as likely to go into battle with one another. Famous Russian sauna shootouts in New York, Chicago, and even Sydney established the requirement that all males entering a Russian sauna must be naked, preventing firearms from being concealed. Despite the fact that the FBI and Interpol have brought down dozens of Russian gangs, new ones appear almost instantly to replace them, owing to their extremely decentralized structure. Number 8. Serbian Mafia, Serbia. The Serbian Mafia is one of the most brutal groups in the world. Their dealings involve protection rackets and arms trafficking, and they're notorious throughout Serbia. According to experts, the Serbian Mafia began during the Yugoslav conflicts in 1991, when the entire country was going through extraordinarily difficult times. The desire to escape living on the streets led some people to become involved in arms trafficking, including plenty of merchandise after the war. Speaking about the Yugoslav war, some members of the Serbian Mafia are reportedly ex-soldiers who are protected by political parties because corruption is rampant in that region of the world. It has led to an endless cycle of violence that shows no signs of stopping. Number 7. Yakuza, Japan. Many individuals are likely fascinated by the Yakuza, commonly known as the Japanese Mafia. It's hard to imagine that the country's underground scenes are teeming with gangster activity in a country where laws are golden, subservience is rewarded, and violence is heavily banned. It appears that the Yakuza are thriving and as populated as ever because of these social customs. It's well known that the Yakuza place a high priority on compliance and use tight rules to govern their organization. You could believe that Yakuza activities are limited to underground black markets and criminality, but you'd be wrong. In fact, one of the most important activities they engage in, and one that brings in large sums of money for the organizations, is corporate blackmail. Number 6. Sinaloa Cartel, Mexico. Sinaloa is Mexico's largest drug cartel, one of several gangs tormenting the Mexican people while acting as a go-between between South American suppliers of illegal drugs and an insatiable American market. According to the White House Office of Drug Control Policy, Americans spend $100 billion on illegal narcotics each year, with around $6.5 billion going to Mexican cartels. The Sinaloa cartel earns around $3 billion per year, with an estimated 60% market share. Despite the arrest of Sinaloa's head a few years ago, the cartel appears to have avoided the bloody succession fight that has afflicted several groups when a leader is removed from office. The Sinaloa cartel is notorious for controlling the illegal drug trade in North America. A significant amount of marijuana and opium plants are grown in the Mexican state of Sinaloa. Farming families in the region focus their efforts on supplying and trafficking drugs to South American drug cartels. They eventually formed their own criminal organization, a fragmented collection of drug trafficking families. The cartel has thrived through bribing Mexican government officials rather than through bloodshed. They do not, however, shy away from adopting violent tactics to protect their interests when necessary. Typically, the violence is directed at other cartels. However, they frequently clash with the Mexican military. Number 5. D Company, India. D Company is the media moniker for a criminal organization founded by Dawood Ibrahim, an Indian Muslim from Mumbai. His criminal enterprise was concentrated on heroin and opium trafficking. Ibrahim, on the other hand, has since become well known for his suspected ties to Al-Qaeda. Officials in the United States and India suspect he was involved in terrorist strikes in India and Pakistan. D Company is India's most renowned crime syndicate. As a result, if someone looks into criminal behavior in India, they will almost certainly stumble across them. D Company is a vast and ruthless syndicate involved in large-scale fraud, extortion, and even terrorist acts. Dawood Ibrahim, popularly known as the Indian Al Capone, is the most prominent member of the D Company. Ibrahim has been evading international authorities since his ascension to the top of the Indian criminal underworld in the 1970s. Their members are spread around the world, including in the Bollywood film industry and various terrorist organizations. They reportedly obtained weapons for Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda, and Ibrahim is ranked third on the FBI's most wanted list for his support of terrorism. Number 4. The Israeli Mafia. Despite being used as a general phrase for organized criminal groups in Israel, the Israeli Mafia is made up of 16 crime families, 5 of which operate on a national scale. The most important of these 16 are the Abagils, Alperons, Dumranis, Abutbuls, and Shirazis. Their daily operations include prostitution, human trafficking, money laundering, protection and extortion rackets, loan sharking, and diamond smuggling. According to certain government officials, this illegal trend of organized criminal operations began in 1989, when a large influx of Russian Jews from the former Soviet Union brought with them a culture of organized crime. To this day, they continue to wreak havoc in Israel, and they show no signs of stopping. Number 3. The Albanian Mafia. The Albanian Mafia, which originated in Albania, operates on an international scale and has been involved in high-level arms trafficking in recent years. Surprisingly, their numbers are very tiny within Albanian borders, with the majority of their operations taking place in most European nations and the United States. This crime syndicate operates on the basis of BESA, which loosely translates to Code of Honor, and every member of their organization takes it very seriously. Individuals who want to be a part of this group must swear an oath that binds them to the crime family for the rest of their lives after passing various trials. Daud Kadriovsky, who is regarded to be the organization's leader, is one of the most notorious members of the group. Number 2. Yardies, Jamaica. Yardie gangs are commonly involved in both gun crime and the illegal drug trade in the United Kingdom. They're responsible for the majority of gun-related crimes and drug trafficking in the UK, despite British officials' refusal to identify them as part of an organised crime organisation. These individuals lack a definite organisation or central leadership, yet this makes them more dangerous because they do not have to explain their activities to a prominent figure. The most notorious of these gangs are from Jamaica and are predominantly made up of Jamaican immigrants who have settled in England, primarily in the London area. Despite being repeatedly deported back to Jamaica, these individuals always find their way back to England to cause more destruction. They're definitely one gang you don't want to get in contact with. Number 1. Cosa Nostra, Italy. The Cosa Nostra, also known simply as the Mafia, is one of the most popularly referenced criminal organizations in the world. The group originated in Sicily in the mid-19th century. The Sicilian gangs laid the groundwork for other mafias to follow. In the 1800s, they administered local justice before growing in authority and expertise. Cosa Nostra, which translates to "our stuff," is the original mafia with a capital M, centered on family clans. It's famous for the omerta, a code of silence that requires absolute loyalty. Turncoats face torture and death, as well as the punishment of their kin. Even today, they settle certain commercial issues and recover stolen goods in Sicily, undermining Italy's slow-moving courts. Some Italian mafia clans have global operations, battling similarly brutal mafia groups from Russia, China, Albania, and other countries. Gangs will sometimes coordinate their crimes and split the loot. Their major source of income is drugs, and they're frequently cruel. They also extort money from construction companies, toxic waste disposal companies, and textile companies. Their targets include Chinese sweatshops that replicate Italian clothing. So, what do you think about these dangerous criminal groups? Which of them do you think is the most dangerous, and why? Comment below.